So what we have here is the Zutec platform. As I've logged in, I'm first greeted with what we see as a dashboard building overview. On the left-hand side, you'll see a typical folder and file structure like many other platforms out there. We're going to actually totally ignore that since the entire Zutec platform is driven entirely by dashboards. So the first tab is this building overview tab. What this provides is a high-level overview of some key information such as the property name, how many floors above ground it is, whether there's a managing agent, who owns the building, and actually we've also included some fire and structural safety information here, a little summary, as this reflects a building safety case. The entire dashboard is completely flexible. This is just what we tend to recommend since it reflects a building safety case. The next tab now is what we call a status report. So what we can see on the left-hand side again is actually a summary of the number of packages we have on site, but also what we call statuses, and I will dive into those in a moment. But initially we can see this graph here, which shows us the information delivery plan. We can see what we've received, what we're expecting, the PC date, and we're always aiming to make sure that we have 100% of the information by the time we get to PC. And how do we do that? Well, we've got essentially further bar charts to highlight accountability, highlight where maybe we're performing well, and other areas where we may need to be more on top of the handover information. So to get that oversight over a contractor and how they're performing, every single subcontractor, contractor on site is actually listed here. And then every single package of information that we're expecting is on this right-hand side. So as an example of how we'd use this, we can have a look at Coney PLC here, for example. As I highlight over the top, I can actually see they're responsible for 8 documents, 4 of which are certificates, 4 are O&Ms. And as I click onto that, we can actually see that is responsible, that is related, sorry, to the lifts area. That's 75% complete. Why is it 75% complete? Well, we can see in the register here that 6 out of 8 documents are actually at final status. So what this is telling us is that there's been a check by both the Zutec team as well as the contractor to confirm that what we have received here is correct, is accurate, and is complete. Where we see a draft status here, what this is indicating to a developer, for example, or the operator, is that they can clearly see that these documents are actually in the workflow and actually being checked. They could be being checked by the Zutec team. If it was draft 2, for example, it could be being checked by the contractor. But what we have here is a built-in process to make sure that when we receive the information, it's correct, and that when we go on to utilize this information, we have that audit history as well. Where is that stored? Well, actually, the Zutec team isn't only uploading the information to the system, we are actually tagging every single document with metadata. So this is a combination of people, but also machine learning. So we record the document identification metadata, including document type, the provider, the package it relates to, specific project info, so what floor or unit this information or the record relates to, key dates. If there's an expiry date on the document, we can highlight that there and be notified. Extended attributes. So this is where we can highlight whether records and documents are relevant for gateway 1, 2, or 3. Additionally, the actual document is seen attached here. We can see that it's the only one revision, and always the latest revision is shown. And any audit history through those workflows where it's being checked would be recorded here. So if there was actually any reason that this document was rejected, it could be recorded, and we can actually see who reviewed it, when, date, and time stamped. So going back to the platform now, what we have is the next tab, Actions Required, which is actually a summary of all these statuses. Again, this enables a developer to be able to have oversight into a scheme that they traditionally may not have. What we can see actually is where packages have been escalated. So the Zutec team chases all subcontractors on site against an information delivery plan to make sure that we're receiving information on time. If the Zutec team has chased 3 times, for example, and not received anything back, that would be escalated to give that final nudge to make sure we get that information. Again, if packages have been at draft status for over 30 days, this is highlighting a little bottleneck, so we clearly display those packages here. Similarly, if any packages have not been received and the due date is within 30 days, as a matter of urgency, we can see which packages these relate to, and we can action the works accordingly. So this page here essentially summarizes all the different packages of information against particular statuses, so you get clear insight into what packages are performing well, what packages are maybe delayed, and which packages need a little bit more attention. Now, the next tab, All Documents, is actually where we have our template, which we utilize. And this template is essentially the best of breed. So Zutec has been around for over 20 years. We've been delivering over 5,000 projects. And in this time, we've developed a very standardized template for digital handover information. So this breakdown may be very familiar, but what we also have are these additional QA elements related to the gateways now. So photographic evidence and QA documentation for your fire and structural elements are extremely important according to the essentially Building Safety Act, and we need to make sure that we have everything we require. If I also want to find information, this is where I can do that. So if I'm looking for a particular drawing, I can utilize these filters to filter down to a drawing. And let's say I'm looking for a cladding drawing. Because we have a standardized template that we try and get across to internal teams, we want people to know that the structure of this template. And if they're looking for a cladding drawing, they can very quickly select that and find that final drawing. We can see it's final, we can see the document number, the title, what type it is, and then the company responsible for that. Having this tab in a slightly different view now, so I will come back to these two tabs, but this is once again that prescriptive template that we've mentioned. And what you'll see here is I'm just opening some examples so we can see the breakdown. But what we're able to see is actually a bit of a gap analysis going on. So we can see what we're expecting for every single package. And if I open the kitchens, for example, we can see we're expecting O&M manuals, installation information, testing and sign-off certificates, as well as built information records. And we can see how complete they are on the right-hand side. This enables you to be confident that you're receiving everything you require. And once again, we can actually filter this to only look at information relevant to Gateway 3, for example. So we can be confident that everything we require is actually complete and received. What we also do, and I've mentioned QA documentation earlier, is actually enable a floor or unit specific view into this. So if I was to select block B and level 1, for example, we can now see those same fire and structural elements on the left-hand side, and we can see whether we've received the photographs or if they're not due yet or if they've been final. So we would obviously go through a check, make sure what's been received is correct. And what you're able to do now is, let's say you're disposing of a building, you can very clearly see what is available for each level, for each unit, and where there might be gaps that you have to pay attention to. So this, again, gives you that insight into the extra requirements the Building Safety Act is now defining. Similarly, by going to this tab, this is actually a tab to contain all your fire and structural safety info. So on the QA documentation side, we have seen a lot of contractors now being asked to provide the developer with this QA documentation, including photographic evidence across these elements, to make sure that we have that golden thread, and that if in the future we are ever requested for this information, we can clearly find this. So this is useful for your safety cases. This is useful just to track compliance. And this is also enables you to have a clear one-stop shop to make sure that you have everything you require for the Building Safety Act. Last tab, as I've already been on this, is that gap analysis, but hopefully this gives you a good overview of how the Zutec platform can be utilized to manage the digital handover process, but also ensure that when you hand this over to your operations teams as a developer, the mobilization is as effective as possible, because you can be confident in the handover information you're submitting. You can be confident that it's compliant with the BSA requirements, and that the operations team will be able to find what they need, as it's all in one platform against a very standardized template, which becomes the backbone of building information.